All right, today we're diving into one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, kind of weird visions in the entire Bible, the temple that the prophet Ezekiel saw. But this isn't just about some ancient architectural drawing. Nope, this is a spiritual blueprint, and its message is, frankly, more relevant today than ever.
So, to really get this vision, we first have to understand the problem it was meant to solve. This was God's direct and very detailed answer to a massive spiritual crisis that was happening.
You see, God's response to the deep corruption he saw wasn't just to tear everything down. Instead, he did something incredible. He provided a blueprint, a really specific and symbolic plan for how things were supposed to be. So let's explore what that actually looked like. Okay, our story kicks off in Ezekiel chapter 8. And here, the prophet gets taken on a kind of spiritual tour of the temple in Jerusalem. And what he sees is just shocking. God's own house, the very center of worship, had become completely and utterly defiled. The spiritual leadership was just completely off the rails. You had 70 elders, these are the community leaders, doing sacred things that were only meant for priests, the ones God appointed. Worldly power had totally replaced divine guidance, which led to biased, unfair judgments. That sacred line between what's holy and what's common, it was just gone, totally erased. The whole system was broken from the inside out, with human ambition sitting right at the center of worship instead of God. So in response to this total system meltdown, God gives Ezekiel this incredibly detailed vision. We're talking chapters 40 through 48, where he lays out the plan for a brand new temple. And this isn't a vision of destruction, it's a vision of divine architecture and perfect restored order. And here's the key thing to get. Every single measurement, every gate, every room, every wall in this vision, it all has a deep spiritual meaning. It was a divine course correction, a spiritual blueprint designed to teach eternal truths and fix everything that had gone so horribly wrong. God actually uses the architecture itself to communicate his standards, the ones that never change. So let's break down a few of the key features that show us these timeless truths. First thing that happens, an angel shows up with a measuring reed and just starts measuring everything. This very first act sets up a huge principle. God is the owner, and he's the one who sets the standards, period. His spiritual house, the church, can't be built based on human opinions or what wealthy people want or just popular trends. It has to be built to his divine specs. Next, we get to the outer wall, and the size is just staggering. It's 500 reeds by 500 reeds, which comes out to about 1 mile square. I mean, that's enormous. Way, way too big to ever fit on the physical Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And that huge scale is our first big clue that we're not talking about a literal building project here. Now, the stated purpose for this massive wall isn't to keep out armies. Its job is 100% spiritual. It's there to create a really clear, absolute separation between the sacred space inside and the secular world outside. This was a direct slap in the face to the corruption Ezekiel saw, where that line had been completely washed away. And get this, the temple's design is a perfect square. Every gate, every court, it's all measured with perfect symmetry. This architectural balance is a symbol of God's absolute justice and fairness. In his house, there are no VIP sections, no backroom deals, no biased judgments. Everybody, whether they're rich or poor, approaches God the exact same way, which is a huge contrast to the corrupt favoritism-filled system it was designed to replace. But maybe the most crucial point in the whole design is the layout. At the precise geometric center of absolutely everything sits the altar of sacrifice. The placement is so intentional. It's a declaration that Christ and his sacrifice have to be the undisputed center of the church, not powerful people, not wealthy donors, not human agendas. Finally, think about how you move through this temple. It's all about going up. To get into the outer court, you had to climb 7 steps. Then, to get to the inner court, even closer to God's presence, you had to climb another 8 steps. The spiritual message is crystal clear. Getting closer to God isn't some casual thing. It requires greater spiritual maturity and a higher level of holiness, not just your social status or how much you know. So as we've seen, the scale of this whole visionary temple and city is just geographically impossible. You literally cannot fit a complex this big into the physical landscape of ancient Jerusalem. And this just confirms, once and for all, that we are dealing with a spiritual reality, not an earthly one. And then the final vision reveals this city's name, Jehovah Shammah. What does that mean? It literally means the Lord is there. And That unveils the whole purpose of the entire blueprint. It's not about a specific spot on a map or some magnificent structure. It's about creating a people in a place where God's presence can actually dwell. So the true temple isn't made of stone and gold. It's the spiritual community of the church. This blueprint teaches us that the goal isn't to build earthly empires or impressive cathedrals. The goal is to cultivate the very presence of God. The true measure of any church's success is simply this: is the Lord there? Okay, so what is the big takeaway from this ancient, really complex vision for us, right here, right now? How in the world does this divine blueprint apply to the church today? Well, the source material throws down a powerful challenge. When the church today struggles, when it feels lifeless, it's often because we've ignored God's blueprint and decided to draw our own. We replace the centrality of Christ with human personalities, we tear down those walls of holy separation for worldly compromise, and we trade God's divine standards for our own methods and strategies.
You know, this prophecy from Zechariah just perfectly nails the core message of Ezekiel's blueprint. The life, the power, the success of God's church, it doesn't depend on human strength or talent or resources. It depends on a radical reliance on the Spirit of God.
And this leaves us with a final, searching question for our own lives and for our own faith communities. Are we building according to the divine pattern, centered on Christ, separated from the world, and empowered by His Spirit? Or have we set aside His plans and started drawing our own?